So let's pop everyone on mute. And let's just wait there. Okay, I think we're ready now. Okay, so present perfect is a big part of OET writing. And it's something that I think people find a bit confusing. And that's understandable. There are lots of ways to find it confusing. The big problem, I think, is confusing present perfect with past simple. So we'll look at that today first. That's the first thing we'll look at. Then we'll look at the different functions. So I'll introduce what present perfect does. And then we'll look at where we can use it in the letter and see, hopefully in this class, hopefully then we'll be able to see some situations where we can compare past simple and present perfect and see why we get confused. Okay, so that's the idea today. Let me open up my study document, which is here. Okay, so have a look at those two sentences. I think everyone can see. Can everyone see post-operatively, Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Yes.
See that?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes.
Just have a look at those two sentences, and I'm going to ask, let's go for Sinem. Are you there, Sinem?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Sinem. How are you?
Thank you. What about you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm okay. I'm really enjoying the good weather in the UK. Amazing. I think we've had 5 days on the run where the sun's shining, which is amazing. Okay, so where's the verb, Sinem?
Dear,
Yeah, give me the verb.
was given.
Was given. That is the perfect answer. Okay, so we've just got a bit of noise coming through from different places there. I think Shiny, I've just popped you on mute. Okay, so was given, and in the next one?
Has been given.
Has been given. Now, Sinem is absolutely perfect there in terms of the verb. The verb is both of these. Is it active or passive?
Given. Passive.
It's passive, isn't it? Yeah, so the passive is the verb to be plus the verb, isn't it? So the past participle.
Past passive. Yeah.
Past participle. So if we look at these two sentences, what happens in the passive is it's the verb to be that changes. So if we look at the verb to be in both of these sentences, what's the tense of that verb to be? Sinem? Do you know?
Past, okay.
The past, isn't it? Yeah, it's the past.
Past, yes. Yeah.
And has been, what's that?
Present perfect.
Present perfect.
Present perfect. That's the difference, isn't it? Okay, so when we look at these two, the thing that's confusing is this word. That's what's confusing for people. When we see a word like post-operatively, we don't know exactly what it means. And it's interesting because it's almost a combination of the word post-operatively and the tense that tells us what the situation is. Okay, so in this case, the idea is that I'm telling you that something happened at a time in the past. And that time was post-operatively. So post-operatively, we know it means, if I was to ask Farouk, what does that mean post-operatively?
After operation.
After an operation. Okay. Now, it's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Because, stay with me, Farouk.
Yeah.
I had an operation on my knee about, oh God, when was that? I think it was 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So am I post-operative?
No.
But it's after my operation though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it takes time. Yeah, more than 3-4 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so when does it end? This is my question.
It's past, yeah, it's past.
Okay, so
finished. Action is finished.
So what about 1 hour after my operation? Am I post-operative?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, what about 1 day?
1 day also, some people
Yeah,
say
what
24 hours, yeah.
What about 1 week?
If you're giving medicine, they giving medicine and you continue, yeah.
Okay.
might be.
But this is interesting, isn't it? Because post-operative, you can actually, if you imagine a timeline, you can say that's when it happened. He immediately after his operation, he was given some ibuprofen. But what if I'm looking back over a long period of time? Maybe we can say that 1 week can be a post-operative period. And now it's 1 week later and I'm looking at it. That whole week now has been given ibuprofen changes things. It's not just it happened once at some time in the past. Now it feels like it happened on a number of occasions in this period. And I think that it's phrases like post-operatively combined with past or present perfect. This is where we get a bit confused. I don't know how it works in your language. Obviously, we've got lots of different languages here. I don't even know if you guys have a present perfect. Okay. But in every language, there's a solution to this because we all have the same experiences. We all find a solution for it. So in English, what we do is we have a difference between the past simple, which is when something happens at a time in the past, which is what we introduced yesterday. And then we've got present perfect, which we use for a number of different ways to sort of slice up the past and look at the past in a different way. And I think that that's what we need to think of. That's why we always introduce the past first in our grammar. The past is something that happens at a time in the past. It's a finished action that happens at a specific time. We specify the time. We give a sense that it happened at a particular moment. But the present perfect, we've got different ways of looking at that period that came before now. And that's what we'll look at today. And hopefully by the end of this class, you'll look at that and say, yeah, I completely understand the difference between was given and has been given. That's the point. That's the aim of today.
Paul, can I say something about the post-operatively?
Go on, Mike.
The post-operatively, it can be 1 week if the case infected and is still in hospital taking medication.
Well, I would say, I think there are other things. What if it was a really serious operation? For instance, if I had a mole removed from my hand,
yeah,
that procedure, okay, maybe it was an infected mole or an infected ulcer or something like that, and it was an operation. Or let's say I had a broken wrist. These are sort of minor operations, aren't they?
Yeah.
But what if I had my leg amputated?
Oh, there is major operation.
That's a major operation. Now, post-operatively, you could imagine 2-3 months later, I'm still post-operative.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah, so there's the healing process is longer, the getting involved, sort of getting used to it takes longer. So yeah, a lot of different things can influence what post-operative means. And
So,
we as smart individuals, we have to look at the situation, think of the tense that's being used, and then understand it.
yeah, I agree. So there is not a specific time.
No, you can't. You can't do it. It could be a specific time. If I said to you, post-operatively, Paul was taken out of the theatre, well, that wasn't 1 month later, was it?
Yeah.
So then it feels like a specific time because I've chosen the past simple and chosen an action which makes it obvious logically. You don't stay in the theatre for 1 month after your operation. It must have been at a specific time immediately after. So little things like that can change it, but we're all smart enough, we're all intelligent enough to make these calculations. All right. But the thing is, the thing that's tricky is deciding when to use past and when to use present perfect in an OET setting. And that's what we're doing now. So let me go through these 3 sentences with you. I wonder if there's anyone in the class. I bet there's some people who can definitely answer these questions. They can fill in the gaps on these 3. I'm sure that there are people, but I'm not so sure that I want to speak to those people. I wonder if there's anybody that thinks they can answer one of them. Let's go. Alper. Which one do you think you can do?
I can do all of them, but
Oh, really? Go on, Alper. Well, we've never spoken about this before. I'd love to hear this. Go on.
because I really tried to figure out. I was really become confusing about the situation. I made a lot of research, but whatever. it's confused because they talk about past.
The past. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great answer. They're confused because they do both talk about the past. Yeah, okay, keep going.
And perfect means, I think it's time period from past to now, and it continues.
Not really, not really. Okay, because you've got past perfect and you've got future perfect as well. So that wouldn't quite,
Oh, all right.
you know what it means? It means
It's connected with now.
Before.
it means before. That's what it means. And for me, when I learned that, Alpa, my head just went. Because when you think about the present, you think, if I said to you what came before the present, everyone says the past. Everyone thinks its own. The only thing that can come before the present is the past. Okay, so what comes before the future? Well, that must be the present. Okay, so if future perfect is what happens before the future, present perfect is what comes before the present, that means that past perfect must be what comes before
Yes.
the past. And that's where this starts to get a bit confusing, because you're thinking, well, the only thing that can come before the present is the past, but then you can have past perfect, so something that comes before the past. If you think that the word perfect means before, it starts to sort of become more logical. And we'll talk about the past perfect next week, okay? But present perfect means before the present. And that means that the present perfect is always connected in some way to Alpa.
Now, current.
Yeah, the present. And I think if you look at these three sentences, it talks about the past, yes, but the past simple talks about the past only. Okay, if you imagine a timeline, it's a cross on the line. It's a time in the past. I built that wall last week. I went to school when I was young. When I was 7, I had a bicycle. They're all things that happened in the past. Finished. Present perfect is things that either start or happen in the past, relate to the present in some way. They're in time periods which are open, etc. Things like that. In some way, they are connected to the present. Even if it is a thing that happened in the past, it's in some way connected to the present. And it's this bit that is confusing for people. It's this bit in some way that doesn't always make sense to people.
Past continuous tense.
Say that again.
And the past continuous tense. Or
Past continuous. Well, past continuous is closer to the past simple than it is to present perfect, because past continuous, as we said yesterday, is a long action that happened at a time in the past. So it could be, when you called, I was having a bath. So having a bath doesn't connect to now at all. You know, in that sentence, we know that that bath's finished because you said when you called, you put it into the past. So continuous can sometimes get confused with present perfect because we get this sense of things continuing to the present. But if it, in that case, it just continued to a time in the past, not up to the present. But we'll look at some examples later on and compare them. Okay, so let's bear this in mind. The present perfect, even though it deals with the past, is always in some way connected to the present. And it's this thing here, it's this in some way. That's the thing that we need to understand. That's the thing that confuses us. Yesterday or the day before, we talked about the black box idea. This for me is the black box. It's a thing that information goes in and comes out. We don't really understand it. Why is it that we use present perfect in this situation and we use past simple in that one? How are they different? That's what we'll discuss. So let's have a look. Let's make a start. Okay. Now this table here, it isn't just full of pretty colors. Okay. I'm going to teach you about functions of present perfect, and the green functions are in some way connected. The yellow and the blue are different. So I'm basically going to show you what I would say, I think, are three main functions, but there are sort of 5 different ways that we use it regularly in OET. All right. But these 3 functions here, they're really closely connected. All right. So first of all, let's talk about past simple. Who can give me the definition? I've said it a few times today. Let's go for Sophia. Sophia, are you there? Give me this definition of past simple.
Hi, Paul. Good morning. The definition for the past simple is like to identify, the past happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a finished.
Yeah, and
Action.
also actions that happen before the present time.
Well, that's absolutely true, but it starts to get a little bit, what you're telling me there, starting to get a little bit more like present perfect. Past simple is a finished action at a specific time.
A specific time.
Specific
Yeah.
time. So if I drew a timeline now, it would look a little bit like this. Okay. So all of our timelines today are going to be like that. Okay. Up to today. So if I said to you, I took the exam last weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
Or Mrs. Smith broke her wrist. Okay. When did she break her wrist? Okay. It could be 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
All right. So that gives us a timeline. Mrs. Smith broke her wrist 2 weeks ago. All right. Does that make
Yeah.
sense, Sophia?
Yes.
Yeah. Now you use past simple all the time, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you use it all the
Yes.
time, for sure, no doubt. I mean, everybody that speaks English uses the past simple a lot. Okay, so let's put that in there. So that should be nice and simple for us. That makes a lot of sense. Mrs. Smith broke
Mrs.
her
Smith
wrist
broke her wrist 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Okay, so broke is the past simple. Okay, now,
Okay.
Thank you, Sophia. Let's
Thank
talk
you, Paul.
about the greens. Okay, all of these greens that I'm going to tell you about now, they all basically relate to open time periods. Okay, that's what I'm going to tell you about, open time periods. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. I have visited, actually, no, let's put this way. Mr. Smith has attended his follow-up appointment. Okay. Mr. Smith has attended his follow-up appointment. Now, is there a timestamp there, guys?
No.
There isn't, is there? There's no timestamp at all. So what this is one of the reasons I think the green ones are the things that we get confused about. Okay. This is a finished action. Because if you think about it, that appointment, I'm telling you that it's finished. It's a finished action with no time stamp. Okay, a finished action with no time stamp. We don't have a specific time. Mr. Smith has attended his follow-up appointment. Okay, so there's one. We don't know when that was. Okay, then we've got this one. We've got Mr. Smith has been given, this is what we did earlier on, has been given antibiotics post-operatively. Now you're thinking, well, now I have a time phrase, but in this sentence, because I've chosen to use present perfect, okay, because I've chosen to use present perfect, I am indicating that this is a period which is not closed. Okay, so where is he? Okay, what if I take this away? and do this. Now, what this is telling us straight away is that he is in the hospital. Okay, and it's telling me that that period, hospitalization, has not finished. That's a period of time that has not finished. So, what type of letter do you think this might be useful for?
Something
Discharge
started in
letter.
past.
Discharge.
Yeah.
Discharge letter. Yeah, for sure. Think about discharge letters. Where is the patient? Always in a discharge letter.
Hospital.
Hospital.
And why do people go to hospital?
For treatment.
Treatment. So normally with a discharge letter, someone came to the hospital a while ago. They were admitted in the past. Then they spend a certain amount of time. There's an intervention of some sort. They're treated. And then they get to this point. They don't stay in hospital forever. And we write a letter to someone like a residential home or to the GP. And we say, this is the situation. They need to go. You need to do these things. Now, if they are still in the hospital, then that means that their hospitalization is not finished. So if I was to ask, let me ask Elizabeth. Are you there, Elizabeth?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Elizabeth. Okay, so when does hospitalization begin?
Upon admission,
Upon admission. And when does it end?
after discharge.
Upon discharge, yeah. So hospitalization, even though it doesn't seem like it, is really a period of time. Like adolescence or childhood. If I said to you, in my childhood, well, how long does your childhood last? It's different for different people, isn't it? But basically, maybe say 0 to 16, childhood, probably. So hospitalization is a phrase like that. Even though it's not a particular moment, it does have the role of being a time phrase in your sentence, but it's not a time stamp. A time stamp is this. This is a time stamp up here. It's like you can say, it's this particular moment, oomph. But hospitalization is not a particular moment. Okay, hospitalization is a period of time. And the thing about periods of time is that they can start, they can end, they can be open. So in this time, it's a finished action in a period which is still open. Okay. Now, could I say during his hospitalization, Mr. Smith was given antibiotics? Yes, I can. But what you're indicating to me there is that something has changed. So put your hand up if you can tell me what the difference is.
It's finished now.
Oh, let's wait. Put your hand up. Sorry, my spelling is not great sometimes. He was given antibiotics. Okay, so Ibrahim, are you there?
Yes,
What does it tell us?
it means that he is discharged in some time in the past.
Yeah, exactly. It means
And
that he's
now,
no longer
yes.
there. And in that case, the period would be closed, wouldn't it?
Yes,
Period would be closed. Okay, so here we can see that in some way, even though it's a finished action, okay, it's a finished action, it's up to the present. Okay, it's a finished action which is up to in a period which is up to the present. So that, I think, is what is confusing. This says at a specific time, and these two basically are the same. They are the same. In this case, I don't give you one of those time phrases. I don't say hospitalization. But what I am telling you is, even though I'm not telling you a time, I'm basically saying that there is a period which is still open. For the first one, what do you think the period is that's still open?
Present?
No. It's a period that began in the past and it's still open till today.
Now,
Mr. Smith is still in that appointment.
It's Mr. Smith's life. That's what I'm telling you. If I say to you, I have visited Turkey twice. When am I telling you I visited Turkey?
Now, when you are in the Turkey.
In the past.
For your
Past.
all time.
Right now,
On your life period.
In my life, I have visited Turkey twice. That's what it is. In my whole life. So I know it sounds really weird, but I'm basically telling you, in all of his life, he has once had his follow-up appointment. That's what I'm telling you in that sentence. I'm not telling you exactly when, but it has to be in his lifetime. And it's the same with me. If I say to you, I have visited Turkey twice, and you say, I don't know when that happened. Well, it can't have happened before 1979. So it is a period of time. It's a short period of time in the history of humanity. Okay. It didn't happen 10,000 years ago. That's what I'm telling you here. It's a period of time, even though it's not clear. That's why these ones are in green. Okay. These ones are in green because they're basically the same thing. There's a period of time which is still open. That's why I'm not telling you a time stamp, because time stamps are for the past. All right. Timestamps are for finished times, specific finished times in the past, whereas the present perfect sometimes deals with periods which started in the past and are open to now. Virginia, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was thinking during his hospitalization, that means between that time when he was in the hospital, he was given antibiotics. In that mean that he's still taking that antibiotics, or it's only in that time?
Not necessarily.
Not
necessarily.
It doesn't say, no.
No, it doesn't necessarily tell us that he's still taking them. The verb is important. Okay, if you said has been commenced on antibiotics,
Oh, that means it's still.
that gives you the sense that at some point in this time, the antibiotics started and they're still happening.
Mhm.
Okay, but all this is telling us is that antibiotics were given to him at some point during his hospitalization.
In that period of time. Okay.
Now, the second thing I think that relates to that one is I could also say during his hospitalization, Mr. Smith has been given painkillers on 5 occasions. Okay. Now it's multiple events, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Multiple events. But why is it present perfect?
Because probably it's important today, no?
No, that's not the reason.
the reason is the time.
Yeah.
no specific time.
Period is still open.
Yeah, his hospitalization is still open, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's still there. Now, if you said he was given, it tells me that the hospitalization's finished. So that's why all of these are in the same color. I've called these the green ones because they're all relating to a period of time which is not finished. And this is why I said earlier, okay, that in some way, these actions are connected to the present. If you look at all of those, all of them, you could use the past simple if you wanted to. You could use a timestamp and you could say, okay, this happened then. Okay, so for instance, during his hospitalization, Mr. Smith has been given antibiotics. All right, if I wanted to, I could say it happened on that day. It happened on day 2. It happened 48 hours after his operation. Okay, I can say that. But I haven't said that in the sentence. I haven't put 48 hours after his operation. I haven't put on day 2. If I use those phrases, I go to past simple. In this one, I could say Okay, on day 1, we gave him painkillers twice. On day 2, we gave him painkillers twice. And on day 3, we gave him painkillers once. But I've decided not to do that. I've decided instead to summarize it all together and just say, in this period of time, which is still open, 5 times. And that's why I think that the present perfect can be confusing.
But if the particular drug is no more given before discharge,
Say that again, Mariam.
if the particular drug or the particular action is no more doing before the discharge, are we still going to put has been or have been?
I'm sorry about, I didn't really understand that, Mariam. Type into the chat box for me. Okay. Type into the chat box. Okay, so let's look at another form of it, and we'll review this in a moment. Okay, another form of it. Okay, this is going to be something that starts in the past and continues to now. So now we've moved away from finished actions. Okay, this is multiple finished actions in a period which is still open. Now we're going to move away from that, and we're going to talk about an action which starts in the past and continues to now.
The present, yeah.
Okay, so if I think about this, okay, let me go and ask someone. So, Ezgi.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Hi, Ezgi. Where do you live?
Izmir, Turkey.
Izmir. Okay, so when did you start living there?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay, so I can put in the past simple. Ezgi moved to Izmir 5 years ago. Where's the verb, Ezgi?
I had moved.
Moved. That's the verb, isn't it?
Yes.
Now that's past simple.
Yes.
Really simple. Okay. Now.
I have been living.
Well, let's wait. All we know, sorry guys, all we know is that something happened in the past.
Yes.
That's all we know. Now we all make assumptions. We assume that we know where Ezgi lives now. Everyone thinks that Ezgi lives in Izmir because we just heard it. But you don't know that from this sentence. But you can be absolutely sure by using present perfect. What would that be, Ezgi?
I have been living in Izmir.
That's going to be the continuous. You don't have to do that. You can just say, I have lived.
Just have.
Yeah. So tomorrow and Friday, we'll look at the difference between continuous and simple. But with the word live, doesn't matter. Okay. But I have lived in Izmir.
For 5 years.
For 5 years. Yeah. Brilliant. I have lived in Izmir for 5 years. Now, it's 100% clear to everybody where Ezgi lives now. Okay, let's put Ezgi, sorry. Is that okay? Can I leave it like that, Ezgi?
Excuse me, sir, can you repeat that again?
Can I leave this sentence like that? Is that okay?
Has.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, so that's another thing. We always have to think when we're doing any verb, the subject verb agreement. Thank you, Ezgi. Okay, so I said earlier that the past is connected to the present. It's always connected to the present in some way. In these ones here, in these green ones, it's connected to the present because there's a time period that we are still in, and that continues up to the present. The present is affected because that time period is still open. All right. We can say has been living, Mariam. Yeah, we can.
Paul.
Let just wait a second. This one, it's a little bit clearer, I think, how it affects the present. Because if I say to you, where does Ezgi live now? You don't know when we use the past simple. You can guess, but you don't know. With the present perfect, it's clear the present is affected by this. Because I've chosen to use present perfect, I've basically told everybody that I still live there now. All right. So here we can see that the present perfect is affecting the present really clearly. Who was that? Was that Shahir? Go on, Shahir.
Yeah. If you can change the sentence, Izgi moved to Izmir 5 years ago to the present perfect. We can say Izgi has moved to Izmir 5 years ago.
No, you can't do that because you've got 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago is a time stamp. It tells me when. Yeah. Just like I have been to the cinema last night. That doesn't work because you've put last night. And whenever you put one of these timestamps, it's the past simple.
Yeah.
If you said Ezgi has moved to Izmir, well, that would be here. Okay.
Without times.
This is a different one. This is different. And this is something that also affects OET a lot. Okay. So if I put Mr. Smith has been informed about his, let's put provisional diagnosis. Diagnosis. Okay, now this is an interesting one because it's not something which started in the past and continues to now. Okay, is it something which is in a period which is still open? Well, I suppose it's this one. It is that one, but it can have multiple. But why would I say this? Think about the letter that I'm writing here. I am writing to a specialist, aren't I? Let's say I'm the GP and I've come up with a provisional diagnosis. It's not good. Okay. They've done some blood tests. I think that it's possibly cancer. That's my provisional diagnosis. I need to send him over to an oncologist. But I've told the patient, I've told Mr. Smith. Okay. So this is the fifth reason.
Paul, may I say something about this question?
Yeah, go on, Farouk.
Yeah, I think it is something happened in the recent past that affect now.
Absolutely perfect, yeah. An action in the recent past, a finished action.
Yeah.
A finished action in the recent past, which directly affects the present.
Yeah, present.
Now, if we think about it, this is important. If the oncologist knows that they know what the provisional diagnosis is, it changes the conversation. It means that they don't have to break the news. They're not the ones who are responsible. They can start the conversation with, as you know, we were concerned about possible cancer. So it's a completely different thing. Okay. Mrs. Johnson has been given advice about her diet. Okay, that means that now she's got that information. We think that in this situation, she will change her diet. Okay, how about this one? It could be something like Mr. Smith has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Right, okay. Mr. Smith has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Mr. Smith was diagnosed with schizophrenia. They're a bit different. They are a bit different. If I tell you, if I came up to you in the street, let's say, Belkis, are you there?
Yes.
Belkis, if I came over to you and I said to you, how are you doing? And you said, oh, I'm fine. And you say, how are you? And I said, well, I have been diagnosed with diabetes. What would your reaction be?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, no, that's interesting. If I say to you, I was diagnosed with diabetes 10 years ago, Would you say
That's really bad. It's the first time I heard that. I see that's
Yeah. That's what you'd say. You'd say, "Oh, I didn't know that." But you'd be surprised, wouldn't you? I've chosen past simple, the second one. Why have you never told me that before? But straight away, the immediate reaction was sympathy when I said, I have been diagnosed. Because I have been diagnosed it happened recently. I'm still processing this information. It's not normal for me yet. And you, as an empathetic, intelligent person, you hear that and you think they probably are upset. They're probably unhappy about that. That's something which happened recently that's affecting now. It's not something that happened a long time ago in the past, in the finished past. It's something which affects the present. And this is a really big thing. This is something which you can confuse people with if you get it wrong. A lot of language mistakes, you don't confuse people, but this one you can do. If you give the wrong response, or if you say this in a specific way, people will give you the wrong response. You don't want to use this when something is finished and over and not affecting the present. Okay. So did you have a question, Belkis?
Yes, I have a question. There is a difference between present perfect. Ezgi has lived in Izmir for 5 years. And if we say Ezgi lives in Izmir since 2000.
Well, yeah, I can see. I think Hussein posted that as well. There's no difference. Ezgi has lived in Izmir since. Don't forget, since can only be used with present perfect when we're talking tenses. It would be 5 years ago, which would be 2018. Is that right? Yeah, both of them are the same. It's still telling me that something started in the past and continues to now. But it's a bit different because it's since instead of for. For is not restricted to any tense. For just introduces a period of time. So my lesson lasts, my lessons usually last for 1 hour. My operation will be for 3 hours. Okay. I lived in Spain for 6 years. It just introduces a period of time in any tense. But since is this idea. Okay, if we look at a timeline. These timelines are much easier for us to draw than the ones in green, because it basically goes like this and continues all the way up to here like that. For both of those, in terms of present perfect, both of those, it's like that. And if I put it, let me take this away. Make that a bit smaller. Okay. If I do this one, it's even, I think, a little bit easier to understand. Okay, I'll draw it again. Here we've got a timeline. Now it's an action here like this, very, very close to the present. This is how I understand it, and it affects now. That's how I think of it. So I said earlier on that in some way, the present is affected by these past actions. Make that a bit smaller. In some way, it's affected. Sometimes I think with the yellow and the blue here, I think that these two, it's really obvious why we would use present perfect and not past simple. Because in these situations, it's clear that something started in the past and affects the present. It's these ones in green here. These are the ones that confuse us and make us make errors in OET. Okay.
May I ask you something?
Ibrahim, yes.
Ezgi has lived in Izmir for 5 years. Does it give us that this finished in some time, no same time?
It's not finished. It's not finished. That's the point of it. I know in the present where she lives now. Okay, and it's the same.
Paul, instead of has leave, we can use present simple. Izgi lives in Izmir since.
No. If you tell me Ezgi lives in Izmir, all you're telling me is where she is now. You're not telling me anything else. And I think that that's the beauty of present perfect. Okay, present perfect is a great tool for summarizing because it tells us two things. It tells us when something started, so it tells us the beginning, it tells us the past, it tells us now what the situation is, and it tells us in between. So it's a really good, concise tool for writing in OET, but it's easy to get it wrong. Okay, let's have a look. I've got a good example for you here. So we could use present perfect in introductions, if we think about it. Who has been recovering from, I don't know, an operation? That would be the continuous. Or who has recently undergone an operation, whatever it is, whatever operation it is. Okay, so present perfect could be used there. But I would say generally, the place that it's going to be the most useful is the timeline paragraph. So if we look at this, it's got a strange noise coming through from somewhere, I don't know where, but I popped you on mute. In timeline paragraphs, we start from the past and we move to the present. And if we just think about what we just said, present perfect has 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the present. It starts in the past, it somehow affects the present. So if I look at this here, present perfect takes us from the past to the present. And there are times when we need to do that in OET writing. If I look at these three here, okay, 17th of March is today. No, it's not. It's 17th of May today, but let's just imagine that 17th of March is today. Well, that means that the 8th of March is the past and the 3rd of March is the past. Okay, so I can do it without using present perfect, and I'll show you. On the 3rd of March, Mr. Johnson presented with symptoms. Okay, 1 week later, he returned with the same symptoms. Today, he has the same symptoms, or sorry, his symptoms are worse. Let's put it like that. Today, his symptoms are worse. All right, I didn't use the present perfect at all. Okay, I've written 3 sentences. If I put it like this, I could say something like, Mr. Smith presented today, presented with symptoms which he has had, which have worsened over the past, what's that, 2 weeks? Okay, so I could put a comma there, relative clause. 1 sentence, 2 clauses. I've used the present perfect. I know here, because it's today. Oh, sorry, let me take that away. Today, Mr. Smith presented. I'm starting with today. I know that if it's over the past 2 weeks, that it must have been the 3rd, because I know that today's the 17th. So using the present perfect takes us from the past to the present. There are loads of other ways that works as well. I'm sure that you're going to get some practice with Alan over the next couple of days, because I'm not going to be here. But if we go back here and look at this and think of the difference between these two, the difference is that post-operatively, what you're telling me is that post-operative period is finished. In this one, you're telling me that that post-operative period is still open. And that basically is the difference
But
between.
if he's not more taking that ibuprofen at that moment we are giving reports.
Sorry, if you want to ask a question, put your hand up. You can't just jump in like that, all right? Okay. Ask me later. Send me a message, okay? Because I've got to finish now. Alan's writing class for nurses is coming in now. But send me a question, Mariam, all right? Send me an email or send me a Skype, and I'll be happy to deal with it. This is just an introduction, okay, to present perfect. There's a lot here to take in. But basically, the idea is these three, similar. These two, a little bit different. Have a look at the study document this evening. Tomorrow, Alan will be back to review the present perfect with you. Okay, so I'll see you at 11 o'clock, guys, to do some speaking. All right?
In EST.
Thank you. See you later.